Welcome, everyone. I'm Beverly Bond, founder of Black Girls Rock, and we are so excited to bring you another episode of the BGR Book Club in partnership with Microsoft. The BGR Book Club is designed to build and promote community, empowerment, literacy, and leadership. Each month, we select a new, inspirational, thought provoking book for our BGR community to read and discuss. And today, we will be discussing Shallow Waters, a book by award winning writer and spiritual psychologist Anita Kopach. Anita is the former chief editor in chief of Heart and Soul magazine and the managing editor of Beauty Sense magazine. When she's not writing, I can tell you this is true. You can find her on the dance floor or traveling the world with her children. Anita now lives in New York with her family. Anita will be in conversation with BGR alum Bria Brown. Bria Brown is a Black Girl alum since 2010. That's before we even took the award show to television. She is now, I'm very proud to read her resume. She is an engagement analysis at FCB Health, one of the world's leading pharmaceutical advertising agencies. She has a background in business analytics and marketing, and she's founded and operated multiple businesses that serve the purpose of uplifting Black and small business communities. Bria's passions include fitness, graphics, and web design, and of course, strategic consulting. She aspires to make an imprint on the world with her contributions through storytelling. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for being here.
It is such an honor. Thank you.
This is going to be such a good conversation. Bria, I am going to let you lead. I'm going to hand it over to you. So I'm going to step back, and ladies, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Bev. Anita, it is so great to connect with you today. How are you doing?
I'm so awesome, feeling really blessed, and it's such an honor to be here.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's great to connect with you and to be able to speak about this wonderful piece of work, Shallow Waters. Having read it was invigorating and exciting, and I'm really glad to be discussing it today. So I guess I would really love to start off with the concept. How did you come up with it, the conceptualization of the book, and how closely does it relate to the original story of Yemaya?
Yes, so Yemaya is a Orisha in the Yoruba tradition in Nigeria, in West Africa. And she is a Black mermaid, and she was said to watch over our ancestors as they went over the Middle Passage. And when I found out about that when I was probably around 18. And it it filled my heart that there was a Black mermaid watching over us and knew and was protecting us. And it just, I was like, so like, I have chills thinking about it. And I realized that there were so many people that didn't know about this story and didn't know about this history. And as far as the story of Yemaya, there are hundreds of different stories about her. So this is just another one to put in the list of stories about Yemaya. And, in different parts of the diaspora, her name is pronounced differently. The way that it's spelled in this book is how it's pronounced in Cuba. And so what I wanted to do was pretty much share a part of our history that a lot of people were not aware of, and help us remember who we really are.
Absolutely. And I find that was one of the bigger pieces of the book. One of the bigger themes is self-discovery. We saw it with Yemaya herself. We saw it with Ozata, who is this wonderful young warrior in the story, when she has to go on her rites of passage and survive in the middle of the night, and even protecting Yemaya. But we saw that piece where it is about self-discovery. How can you talk a little bit more about finding ourselves and how important it is to navigate through challenges for self-discovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing about self-discovery is that it has to be a journey that we step on ourselves, right? Because what was interesting about Yemeya is that there were so many people who recognized her and knew that she was a goddess, and she didn't know herself, right? She didn't believe it. She would be like, "Oh yeah, they're talking about someone else. This is not the right Yemeya you're talking about." And so it's for me, the story kind of mirrors what so many Black women and Black girls go through, where we don't necessarily see our greatness, and everyone else is seeing it, and they're intimidated by it, but we have no idea. Like, it's just this whole journey that we go on until we're like, oh my gosh, I am I'm not going to say the word, but like, I'm the bomb, right? Like, that's what I'll say.
Absolutely. And I really appreciated it in the story. There's a moment where you see her points of self discovery when she's on trial. And they want to, I guess, have her executed for being a witch. And she's like, "Oh, water is my strong suit." So she goes underwater and she has to fake her death. But she's smiling as she's going through this passage. She's smiling as she's going through this moment because she knows who she is. And
Yes.
I think that is such a valuable piece there. And you see it throughout. She was so relentless. And so, so strong and determined to to be able to survive and to save her people and to even find her love, Obatala.
Yes. And I think for me, that's one of my favorite parts about it, is that it is a love story. And, when my son read it, he's 13 now. And when he read it, he loved it. And at some point, I was talking about how Obatala is an Orisha as well. And he was like, wait a minute, Obatala's an Orisha? And I was like, yes. He was like, how come he doesn't have powers? And I was like, well, the thing is about Obatala's powers is that, he is the wise one. He is the one who brings the community together. And he did have those powers within the book. It wasn't the same powers that Yemeya had, but he had the powers of bringing community together and protecting and being the wise one. And so I'm not sure if he liked that answer, but.
Still powers in their own way, absolutely. Um, can you also talk a little bit about like just writing, being a writer, and going to this realm, which is it's historical fiction, and it's also a mix of sci-fi as well. I saw some of your other previous interviews and speaking about some of your favorite authors like Octavia Butler. What was
Yes.
it like to build on this imagination and to create this experience?
Oh, I love that question. So, Octavia Butler has been one of my favorite authors since I was very young. And I've always been into sci fi. And when I started reading her books, it was the first time that I saw Black men and Black women in sci fi stories. And it was such an awakening for me, because I don't think I even realized that I wasn't in the stories before. I was just, enjoying them. And then once I was in them, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is a whole other adventure." And what I always like to say about the journey becoming a writer. So for me, my strong suit when I was younger was math and science, and I'm actually dyslexic, so I would really try to run away from anything that had to do with writing, and I would only read, to myself, because it's a whole process of making sure I'm seeing the words right. And so, and none of my teachers knew that I was dyslexic, because my mom would literally study with me for hours for spelling tests. I don't even know if kids have spelling tests anymore, but back in the day when we had spelling tests, when we didn't have computers and spell check, my mom would sit with me for hours, and I would have to memorize how every word was spelt, because I could not understand any of the rules of the English language. And I still don't, right? And so what's really interesting, and what I tell people, it's not always what you're good at that you end up doing. sometimes it's the thing that you've worked so hard at to be able to just be proficient, right? and and I just fell in love. I went to UC Berkeley to do civil engineering, right? Because that's what was easy for me, right? Which is so funny that, all that stuff was easy for me. And in my senior year, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to write. I want to study, the African diaspora, and I ended up changing. And so it's so funny to me that someone who had such a hard time, who's dyslexic, could end up being the editor in chief of a national magazine, could write novels, writing TV shows. So it's like you really can do whatever it is that we want, even if we feel like we're not good at it. And if there's a passion and if you love to do it, especially with writing and reading, what's most helpful is to do a little bit of it every day. If that's something that you want to do, have a journal, write in your journal, do free form writing, things that they don't have to make sense. You could just start writing, about your day or your feelings, and all of those things help on the journey.
Absolutely. I recently saw this graphic image, and it was like when you look at a ladder and you see maybe step 100, step 200, step 500, it seems way harder to achieve getting up the ladder. But if you look at it as like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and you still do a little bit at a time, it makes it so much easier to digest and to get to where you're trying to go.
Absolutely. Look, you're giving me chills. You're giving me chills this whole time, because that's exactly what I do, right? Even if it's just figuring out a character's name, right? That's the one thing I've done for the day, right? And then the next day you do a little bit more. And because it can feel like such a journey, especially to write a whole novel. And this one person said to me, if you think about it, if you write a page a day for a year, you have a novel. I was like, "Ah, I haven't done that yet." I'm going to take that advice. But it's really amazing, like how small steps can really get you on your journey.
Absolutely. And like you said, writing a novel is no easy feat. It takes years for so many, as it should, especially when it's such a rich piece of text, right? Um,
Yeah.
I also noticed that you had mentioned you had like a writer's block in that time period. What was the overall process for you outside of the small steps and little by little? Like, what was that process like for you to get through to the finalization of it? Were there any gems you found along the way that were helpful as well? Like,
Yeah. So the process was really intense for me because I felt like as if I was also healing my ancestral wounds. I've never been a huge fan of stories that take place during slavery. And so it was so interesting that this came through, because I'm like, I don't even like this time period, right? And what I realized was that I had so much pain that was unrealized that I wouldn't even look at it, or I wouldn't even read it. And so while I was reading and well, as I was writing this book, I had moments where I was just crying on the floor, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is what my ancestors were actually there. And as a psychologist, I know that we carry within ourselves what our ancestors went through. And so I was tapping in to those intense moments on the Middle Passage, on like all of these things. And so it was very intense. And so I had to go through a lot. And when we do the writing exercise, it's really interesting, because you can get yourself into this place of, okay, so then what were we feeling, what were we thinking, what were we seeing? And so that's really, like I would have to like kind of break down and then get into that space, and it was very emotional. um but but I knew that it was coming up for healing. And my intention was for it to be healing for others as well.
Absolutely. I can certainly say so. Even seeing the gems of spiritual practices that you brought into the text, like sage or just spiritual circles with your sisters. Um, it's so funny that you had brought up your healing process and what you were going through as you navigate this story, because as I feel like in this day and age, we're so much more aware of the amount of trauma that we experience and go through watching or reading stories that come from this era of like um, our ancestors being enslaved. And there's a lot of repair that has to go into like what we do after we watch or indulge. So I can only imagine what it looked like writing and partaking in this. What were some of the things that you did offline to work on healing and caring for yourself while writing this book?
Yeah, I do a lot. So I actually have, what you brought up with, healing circles and things like that. I have at least 4 healing circles I do each week. And so all of these women, they're women circles, and they held me through it. So if I had an issue, they helped me heal the issue. And that has been, I think, one of the most important things in creation, in creating, is having community that holds me and also holds me accountable, right? Like, oh, how's your book going? Right. And so that has been really amazing. And another thing, within the process, it really felt like I was guided by Yemaya. It felt like she was sitting on my bed and telling me the story. I didn't know what the story was going to be like before. I just kept writing and writing. And there are a few things. There was this magical story with Harriet Tubman. And at the time, I was the editor in chief of Heart and Soul magazine, and I had a sales meeting in the city, and I went to go do the sales meeting, and it was in a restaurant. So there was, the sales meeting was, we were in a certain part of the restaurant, and then the restaurant was open to other people. So when we were done with the sales meeting, oh wait, I have to tell you the first part of the story first. So before I went to the sales meeting, I was writing at home, and I was writing a part about Harriet Tubman in the book. And when I was writing it, she was giving a 2-year-old a tincture to fall asleep while they were running away. And so after I wrote that, I was like, you know what? I think that I need to erase that part, because I don't know if Harriet Tubman was an herbalist. And, I want to really keep to, as much as I can, the historical facts. And so when I got to the sales meeting, after it was done, this woman walks up to me and she says, "Did you know that Harriet Tubman was an herbalist?"
Divine, divine.
I was like, "Why did you just say that to me?" And she was like, "Because, it's Black History Month, and I just felt like you would want to know it." And she was a Black woman, so it wasn't offensive for her to say that to me. But she was like, uh, you know, just said it. And I was like, okay, Harriet, I'm not taking that part out. So I think what the point is, it felt like I was guided, right? And to be open to the guidance, whatever that looks like for us. As we follow that guidance, we're supported in different ways from the universe. And if we can remember that, because sometimes it can feel like the world is against us, right? And it is so up to us and up to our community. And like, just the fact that Bev is starting, that she started this Black Girls Rock, like, I know she knows it's amazing, but the 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 amount of healing, support, and just, it's just so important for all of us to feel safe and move forward in our creativity.
Absolutely, absolutely. Creating safe space in that way is very imperative. There's like a prayer I like to say where I say, thank you for the paths that have been opened from those who I know and those who I don't know.
Ooh.
Because so many people make a way, and they make an impact, maybe directly or even indirectly. And Black Girls Rock has been such a branch of opportunity, safe space, healing. And I think I'm grateful for Black Girls Rock. I'm also grateful for the intention that goes behind creating community, especially for Black women and Black folks in our community in general. Um,
Yeah.
Speaking of community, just tying it back to the book, I was thinking about how often Yemaya ran into that wherever she went. And I really appreciated the the full picture from a historical context, um, and even just the the way that you drew it out from your own writing style. I guess I'm wondering, how did you determine how much of the history that you wanted to include? Like, you had to pick and choose, or was there things that you wanted to bring in that you had to keep out? Speaking specifically to Harriet Tubman, bringing her in that time period, and the Quaker allies, it was like, wow, there's so much richness, there's so much fullness here. And I felt you really covered the scope. So I guess I'm wondering, what was it like bringing things in or taking them out as you were being guided?
Yeah, so that was another thing. It's like it felt like I was guided in that as well. Like, who do I bring in? Um, because I did bring in well-known historical figures, and also historical figures that a lot of people don't know about. And the way, I mean, I did do a lot of research, so I did find some of the characters in that way. But there was this one day where, one of my friends sent me a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, and I love him. And another friend sent me a quote, and then I opened like Instagram, and there was a quote from him, and I was like, okay, there's three things, like, right away. Let me see how old Ralph Waldo Emerson was during this time, see if it even makes sense. And it was perfect. And so it's like, okay, so he's asking to be in it, right? And what was really interesting about having the historical figures is that I really had to keep to the authenticity of their stories as well. And although I did make up some of the things that happened, I still, kept to what they went through. And one of the things as a psychologist that I feel is really important in our healing as Black women is to know that not everyone is against us. And I really, what would I say? I struggled with the feeling of, are there too many white saviors in this story? And what I realized was, like, you know what? Nobody saved Yemaya. She saves herself, right? So while they attempted to, there wasn't that energy. And then I was like, every single one of them in the story are historical figures that put their lives on the line in order to help us. And so I was like, especially as a psychologist, having that love, like, there are people that love us, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it, right? And so I was, I added in the allies and all of the other amazing historical figures. Um, what was really interesting with the indigenous community is that, I spoke to an indigenous professor, and she advised me not to have the names of the indigenous communities, that because at first I did have the names, and she was saying that there's so much of a difference between each nation, or even within the nations, that if I'm saying something that maybe happened in the south of the nation, they could be like, well, this was not one of the practices. And so I just ended up taking out the names of the nations. But what's really interesting with that is that there's so much erasure of indigenous stories, that I really wanted their part to be memorable and strong, and how were they allies, to us back then. And so that's really fun. Ozata is one of my favorite characters.
Oh, she was so wonderful when she had her weapon that
Yeah.
she created. I just like, wow, she's bad. You know what?
Exactly.
But yeah, I completely agree. The representation, especially for Indigenous folks, how they've shown up as allies, or how they've existed alone, is not represented at all, or very much so, in my experience. And so, making space for other persons of color and communities of color to be seen is super important.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking about love, I really wanted to get into the poem from Obatala. I can read a little bit of that because I just thought it was wonderful. You love me the way water loves earth, soil, seeds, flowers, trees, pouring forth life, raining down love, gathering in sparkling crystal drops of light. You love me the way water loves me. I remember once the water of your love became something more. It was a part of all the water there is, and I had to look away from you because in that moment, I spied the other half of myself. So beautiful. Oh my goodness. It was so sweet. And you felt the strength, this unspokenness throughout the entire narrative.
Yeah.
What was it like building upon that and imagining and creating this love story between Yemeya and Obatala?
Oh, it was so amazing because I could feel their love. I could feel their love. I have chills again as you were talking about that. And a really amazing thing about that poem is that it was actually written by Lee Thompson Young. And I'm sharing it now. I had never shared it before, but I so he passed away, I believe, in 2011, maybe. I don't know exactly what year. And so he had written that poem quite a while ago, and sent it to me in a journal. And when he passed away, I was looking all around, all around my house for that poem because I knew I had to put it into the book. And I was like, where is it? Where is it? And I couldn't find the journal anywhere. And then I heard like a voice tell me, call my mom and tell her that there's something for you at my apartment. And he had just passed away. So I was like, I don't want to call his mom. Like, like that's real sensitive. And like, I don't want to do it. And he's like, do it, do it. I was like, okay, okay. So I call her, and Dr. Love, she actually wrote the foreword to this book, was Lee's mom. And I said, Lee is telling me that there's something in his apartment for me. And she was like, okay. And she went to his apartment. She said that she looked around. So Lee was my daughter's godfather. And so she said she looked around, got a few things for Sadie, my daughter. And then she was like, so what is it that's for Anita, right? In this full apartment. And she finds a journal, and she sends me this journal. I was like, well, I'm not going to read his diary, like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, let me just open it up. And the poem was there of him practicing it. And I, I just didn't know what to do at that point. Like, I was just like, okay, it's real. And he was a priest of Oshun. And Oshun is, for everyone else who doesn't know, Oshun is another Orisha within the Yoruba Ifa tradition. And so he was very connected to the tradition. And so I'd ask him a lot of questions about it. And so he was definitely a part of the journey and now a part of the book. And so, yes.
That
I
is
tell his
wonderful.
mom the story, so that's why I feel free to share about it now.
Absolutely. It's true alignment. Was there any connection between that and Yemaya losing the poem in her experience and then coming back across it?
I did not even think about that. No.
As you were telling me, I was like, she also, you know?
Yes. Wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
So this has been such a wonderful experience. This book seems to be such a collection of artwork between history, sci-fi, experience, community. Is there anything else that you would like for the reader to take away with this book?
Yes, I would love for the reader to feel like they are remembering a part of themselves, remembering who they are, remembering a part of their history. And I love that you were saying that it's a part of the artwork, because one of the things that I loved about the process was that we had artists draw Yemeya, and in the back of the book is the winner that we chose. And so I think that that was just such a beautiful part for everyone to like imagine what they think that Yemeya looks like. Um, yeah.
It's wonderful. It's such a beautiful illustration too on the back. They did an amazing job. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Um, yes, actually, I love that you asked one more thing, because I'm always having one more thing. But what really put a fire under my butt to get this done was when I heard that Disney was making The Little Mermaid black, which I was so happy about, right? But I was also like, okay, this is reminiscent of when I would have to color my little Disney characters black, right? And I was like, if the original mermaid story is a black story, why don't we tell that? And so I was so excited to just be, it feels like to be tasked with sharing one of the stories of Yemaya with a larger audience.
I love that. I love that. Paving the way, opening doors. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Anita, for your time. And without further ado, I will reintroduce Beverly and welcome her back to the chat.
This was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bria. Thank you, Anita, for sharing this work. Thank you for creating this work. I so appreciate you both, not only for sharing this with our audience, but for everything that you're doing. I think we are going to transition to the workshop right now, and Anita, you will be leading us.
Awesome. Thank you. So, one of the most beautiful things with writing, especially with writing this book, was that I had to imagine that I was something else completely different other than human, right? And and what I would love for us all to do, if we have our notebooks, if we just pick up our notebooks and hold them in our hands as we just take a moment. You can close your eyes if you feel like it, and just imagine that you're something else other than human. You could be a raindrop falling from the sky. You can be a seed growing from the ground. You can be a dog going on a walk, or a computer screen looking back at someone using you. Just take a moment to feel into what it is. And really think about what you're doing in that moment. If you're the raindrop, have you dropped on someone and you're rolling down their face? Is the seed breaking up? underground, breaking through. And as you're in this space, think about what do you feel? What do you smell? What do you see? Think about all of your senses. What do I taste? Is there anything that you taste? Smell is important because that's one of the strongest memories. Sometimes you can smell something and remember that, oh my gosh, I remember that smell from when I was 7 years old at the fair, right? So bringing in all of the senses. And once you feel like you're really there, just take a moment and write down what it is you're experiencing and bringing in all of those senses: see, smell, hear, taste, feel. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that.
That's such a great exercise.
Thank you.
It's really, I've never been asked a question like this before. So it's not easy, but it's kind of like, I feel like I'm somewhere cosmic,
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know quite what that means, but that's what I feel. I'll wait for Bria Brown to tell us what her answer is, because I don't have a completed answer here.
So I saw myself as earth, or like maybe mud or ground in rainforest. So I saw the sky, I saw the trees just tall, and the rainforest setting. I heard birds calling and the wind in the trees, just like the crackling of the sounds around me.
Mm.
I smelled rain, like that fresh rain smell when you're in the tropics. I couldn't think of what I tasted being earth, but
I love that. I love that. Wow. Are you a writer too? Is that on your resume?
I write a little bit. I write a little bit.
Yeah. Ooh, and I'm so excited to hear what everyone else has and wrote. I know for me, when I, did that exercise and dropped into what would it be like as a mermaid, right? Like swimming in the water. Yes, they do have some human qualities, but they're also a fish. And so one of the things that I realized was I wouldn't be speaking underwater, right? Like it's a whole different way of communicating. And I just thought about like when I was younger and I'd be in the pool with my sisters and we'd like go underwater and pretend like guess what each other are saying underwater. but that was like one of the things is that okay, I wouldn't be speaking. And how would I communicate? And how would I hear things? So they're more muffled, or are there ones that are even louder because of the vibrations underwater? And like just really diving into that, and if you add each of those things, it becomes the creative writing, right? Like it becomes that journey, and you don't even really need to know how to write in order for it to sound good, because if you just go through, what do I see, what do I hear, what do I smell, what do I taste, and bring that out, then people are going to be in that experience with you.
Nice.
And I really want to know the cosmic, like where in the cosmos are you a star? Are you a moon?
I feel like I feel like if I were in the cosmos, what I'm seeing in my mind is like a star being born. You know what I mean? Because it's like in motion, like in motion. But then I also have this thing that I feel wind, like I would be wind, right?
Mm,
But like not like hurricane forces, but more like right before storm, like that breeze, that sweet breeze and I feel like my favorite space would be in leaves in between the trees, you
I
know.
I can't even tell you how intuitive you are right now. My
What?
next novel is called The Wind on Our Tongues, and it is about Oya, who is the goddess of the wind. She is the wind.
Wow.
And I'm
Wow.
just sitting here like, oh, I'm calling upon you. Like, what is it that you feel? That you said
Wow.
your favorite place would be between the leaves. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
all right.
This is such a cool exercise though. I love it. And
Uh,
I love like Bria, how did you find the earth? Like how did that come to you?
It definitely was the inspiration of the water drop, like this idea of being what Anita had said was like a molecule of water. Um, I'm not so sure how else it came to me. I don't think I wanted to be an animal, but what is that experience like being an element?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciated that you were the cosmos and even the
Yeah.
wind. I feel like even that comes together when I thought about when you said you were the cosmos, I was like, well, what would you hear? And I just think about the swirling,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
And the it's almost like the echoing. I thought of both, and I don't know if you can have two.
Listen, there's
But
no rules
the
here.
wind the wind felt so right to me because it's like, what would you be if you were not human? You know? And that's such a loaded question. Like
Right?
you never think about it. So you really kind of think about, I guess, what experience you would want to have,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Exactly. And one thing that's really great when doing the exercise, if you do it at home, is writing it in the first person, right? Like really getting in and saying, I feel this, I smell this, and that takes it to even a whole other level as you're, doing the exercise.
Oh, I love that. I might be writing a book after this session with you, Anita.
I love, I love it. Yeah. So that's pretty much it as far as the exercise. I mean, you can bring this into the way that we did the exercise. You can bring it into, if you have assignments at school or if you need to do different things, you can bring that process in with you and blow your teachers away with it.
I love it. Yeah, this is amazing. Like, really amazing. Well, do you ladies have any other parting words, things that are happening, where we can find you? And Anita, of course, where we can, if there are book stores that you'd like to recommend,
Yes,
or just wherever
absolutely.
books are sold.
Yes, I mean, I would love for people to get these at independent Black bookstores. Um, my paperback is coming out in August, so this month, right?
Nice.
and and so that it's really exciting because the cover is a little bit different. So that's going to be special and it's going to feel like a new book for me. And so you can get that really anywhere books are sold. But if you can find an independent bookstore to an independent Black owned bookstore would be awesome. And yeah, pretty much if you want, you can follow me on Instagram under my name, Anita Kopach. KOPACZ. And that's pretty much where I'm mostly active. I do have a little TikTok account, but I'm really not good at that.
I don't mind. And Bria?
Yeah, I am more behind the scenes nowadays, supporting with strategy and web design. So nothing coming down the pipelines that I can disclose, but you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Bria Brown MBA.
Oh, yes. Speaking of your MBA, I forgot to mention that Bria Brown has an MBA in business analytics from St. Peter's University in New Jersey.
I do.
So
I do.
proud.
Thank
Congrats.
you.
Yes, she
All
does. So
good.
I want to thank everybody for joining in. And again, thank you to our partners at Microsoft, our production tech team, our ASL interpreters, and of course, our author and our alum who make this all possible because teamwork makes the dream work. For more information, visit us at blackgirlsrock.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Black Girls Rock, and use the hashtag Black Girls Rock.